So again, back to the steel, 22.5 degree angle. Perpendicular would be 90, half of that would be 45, and half of that would be 22.5. So somewhere between 20 and 25 degree angle to the steel, the blade to the steel, is the natural bevel of the knife blade. So the onion, we're going to cut it in half from the stem to the tip. And that makes it easier to peel, since you have to cut the onion in half most likely anyway, and you expose the skin in many places to lift it up off the outer leaf of the onion. So it's much easier to peel that way. And now you have a nice flat surface to lay your onion down, and you can slice through the onion. And I'm using just the skinny part of the tip of the blade because it goes through the onion very well that way, and it's a slicing, dragging motion. I lay down the smaller piece at the end because it lays flat and it's easier to control. I have my fingertips in. I'm actually touching my fingertips because I'm using my fingers as a gauge of how thick to go. And I didn't cut through the core of the onion. There's a top and a bottom, stem to tip. So I didn't cut through the stem part. That's the core. And I made slices to the core and then across to make a dice. All right, and it was all the leaves were held together by the core. So you must practice that. Peeling the potato, I get full length out of the potato and the peeler to maximize my the amount of skin that comes off. Then I square up the potato a little bit, and just like I did with the carrot, to cut off the round edges, and so I can make a nice uniform cut, again for appearance and for even cooking. Now, once I have the potato squared up, again I could cut nice even blocks off of there, and I'll show you a medium dice, and which is about a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch. And I could stack them if they'll stay, and then I cut across to cut my nice even cube or dice. And uniformity is very important. It shows culinary skill, and it also cooks even, because if the vegetables are different sizes, they're going to cook different. Here we are cutting a yellow squash. Now, measuring it up, I'm going to cut a julienne, so I want about a 2.5 to 3 inch length, which is standard for julienne cut. And I'm just cutting the skin off because that's the part I'm going to use. For a nice summer squash, the skin is very palatable and tender, and it's also yellow, so it looks nice. So I'm shaving that off with the tip of the knife because that's where I have the most control. Like I said in the beginning, the chef knife or the French knife or the cook's knife, whichever you prefer, it's all the same. That's your workhorse. That's your main tool. The other knives are specialized tools. And once I take the skin off, then I could cut down on them in a julienne, a very thin, like I'm showing you now, very thin strips, which will be about 1/8 by 1/8 by 1/8, and it looks good when it's all said and done. This is the rocking motion. The tip stays on the blade, and when you have a pile of them, they look very good. And you can blanch them in hot water or steam them or saute them, and they look very nice and they taste very nice. Now this is the same thing but using a zucchini. So the green and the yellow together look very good. The zucchini has a tendency to be a slightly thinner skin. I'm using a paring knife because it has a little bit more control, it's a little bit thinner blade, and it's easier to get the skin off. I'm showing you the difference in the thickness or the gauge of the skin between the yellow squash and the zucchini. And it doesn't always work out that way, but you have to always look at your product to decide which knife to use. The right tool for the right job, it's very important, and also whatever you're comfortable with. So knife skills are extremely important, and when you could stack to save time, then please do. But if you're not going to get an accurate cut because it's kind of falling apart, then there's no need to do that. Now, I also, when I clean a pepper, I cut it from stem to tip. The stem is the green core part of the pepper. And then it's easy to get my fingers in there and then just pull that core out. Now I'm cutting the pepper into three, each half into three thick strips, because it's easy to slide my knife along the ribs or the white membrane and get that white out of there, because that's not that appetizing or doesn't look good. And so then I can, once I have it all cleaned up, I'm cutting it in half to have my standard 2.5 by 3 inch length to cut my julienne, about a 1/4 inch julienne. So it's a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch by 2.5 to 3 inches. If I cut across the julienne, then I will have a dice. Okay, and I cut it the same measurement, a 1/4 inch. So it's a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. Here I'm showing you if I push that pepper flat, and I'm going to do a very thin julienne, I can shave off a nice fillet, so to speak, of the pepper, and even cut that in half, because I'm going to cut even a thinner julienne, maybe 1/8 by 1/8 by 1/8. So I'm cutting this thin side of the pepper in half lengthwise, and then I'll cut it in half to get my standard 2.5 by 3 inch length. I'll square it up a little bit and get rid of the pieces, and then I could just come down on it with my knife in that rocking julienne motion. And what I do is I push the piece of vegetable, or in this case the pepper, into the knife with my thumb, keeping my fingers curled in and bringing the knife back to my knuckles, because that's what's kind of gauging how thick. Here I'm not doing that, because I'm just kind of guessing and moving my fingers back as I cut through, because whatever you happen to have more control of, and with the gloves on, it's difficult to keep your fingers up close to the knife, because there's a lot of wrinkly latex in there. Okay, so here I'm just kind of moving my fingers back to how thick I want the julienne to be. Now, mushroom cutting is very fun and can go very fast. It's kind of awkward because they're round and they roll. So here I just have to keep on going, and my thumb is behind the mushroom. But I'm going to show you an easier way by cutting it in half so it lays flat on the board. There I'm actually bringing the knife to my fingers. My fingers are curled in, so I can't cut them. And my thumb is pushing. See, I'm showing you how my thumb is pushing it in. And there you go. And I keep on going and pushing the mushroom with my thumb into the blade. And my fingers regulate the thickness of the gauge of the cut. And I use the tip of the blade. So mushrooms can be very great to practice on, and they look good when you cut them fast. They look like you have a lot of skill. And if you cut them really thin, you get a lot of mileage out of them. When you cook them, they shrink up. They're 85% water, and the thinner you cut them, the more mushrooms you actually have. Cleaning parsley, very important. I keep that twine or rubber band around the stem, but I have to get my fingers in the leaves and loosen it up, make sure that water gets in there. But holding it together with the twine and the rubber band keeps it nice and together, and it's going to be easier to chop. And I could shake it. It holds it together, and I shake it dry, because you don't want to cut it when it's wet. It's like cutting the grass wet. So once you shake it dry, you could just kind of shave it off the stem with your knife. Now hopefully your knife is nice and tuned up on the steel, and so it's honed and it's sharp. And what I'm doing is I'm taking off the bigger stems that I happen to kind of shave off with the leaf, so you could pull away the bigger stems. I'm clumping it up and kind of putting it in the palm of my hand, and then running my knife through it quickly, the first cut, and then I'll bunch it up again. And so I found a stem, so I must get rid of that, and then I could kind of get a nice pile going. And then here I just kind of rock that knife and chop it with the heel of the knife, keeping this tip stable with my other hand so the knife doesn't kind of buckle down and fall flat. So I keep on scraping it up into a pile and then chopping very fine. All right, and I have it, it's nice and washed, and you have to wash it because you have to, and even taste a little bit to make sure it's not gritty, that there's no sand or dirt in there, because it's very unappealing for a customer to get that grittiness that sometimes you find in leafy greens, herbs, and lettuce and what have you. It's easy to pick up, scrape it off the side of the bowl, and put it away. We're creating mise en place. Mise en place is everything in its place. It's your setup. It's your station preparation. So now you have the products to work with in their necessary state for you to cook with them. You don't have to chop it up too much to whatever you prefer, because you want it to be visible in the product. You should clean up your station with a sanitary towel that's dipped in a sanitary solution. And now I'm just chopping through garlic. But these are peeled garlic cloves, but now this is an important technique right here where you kind of grind the blade